So let me. So yeah, today at Agile Aarhus, we are happy to have Joe here. I know Joe from a collaboration fellowship I'm part of, and this is one of the good things is also being hybrid, because Joe sits in South Africa. Would be a little long to travel to get to Aarhus, also for the environment, I guess, if we need her here physically. So Joe, you are going to make us smarter today. Could you tell us a little more about yourself and what we're going to learn today?
I will. Thanks so much, Jan. Hi, everyone. I'm very excited to be here. I am Joe, as Jan said, and I'm in Johannesburg. I am a coach and a trainer and a lover of learning new ideas and things. And I've worked mostly in Joburg, but I've also worked all over Europe and all over South Africa as well, as part of different collaborations and different organizations. Currently, I'm part of the Better Change Fellowship, and I work with a whole lot of awesome people there, doing very cool things. And in South Africa, I have my own consultancy or coaching. So what are we going to learn about today? We're going to learn a little bit about Wardley mapping. So maybe some of you are Wardley mapping experts already, in which case you won't learn anything. But if you're like me and you're just kind of you love his ideas and you're looking at a whole lot of his ideas and you just want to explore or learn a bit more or see it from a different perspective, then that's kind of where we're going to go today. So I've been playing around with Simon's ideas for quite a while now. When I say a while, probably about a year and a bit. I Wardley map many things whenever I can. I've got a few meetups that I try to keep going to regularly just to learn. And I just play around a little bit because I think that there's a lot of utility in some of his ideas. And not just from an organizational strategy perspective, but from product strategy and all different kinds of ways of thinking about, doing all kinds of strategic thinking. So that's cool. I also love playing around with new ideas, and I love strategy. So I love thinking about it. I love someone said to the other day I was in a session and they're like, oh, the strategy part is the boring part. And I was like, oh, that's my most fun part. But for some people, it's the boring part. For me, it's the fun part. So if you think that strategy is fun and thinking about strategy is fun, then this is probably the right place for you. So that's me. Shall we jump in? Cool. Anyone got any questions? Everybody on the Miro board. I've shared a Miro board in the chat. Is everybody there? Just give us a thumbs up or a whatever if you're there. And if you're not there, then don't worry. I'll also do a quick screen share for the recording. So we'll do the Miro board and I'll share some of the screen. And I'm going to draw at the same time. So talk and draw is part of what I do. Let's do this quickly. Okay, there we go. Is everybody seeing the right thing? Okay, excellent. Thanks, Jan. Alrighty. So, does anyone know anything about Wardley mapping? A tiny little bit. You've heard about it. Okay. Jonas has done some stuff. Anyone else done anything? Played around with it? Paula, little bit. Okay.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Good morning. First, I'm Ole. I'm German, but I've got a Danish name, and I love Denmark very much. So I was very happy to take part on a meetup from Aarhus. I just spent the last weekend in Billund together with my son. Lego house was great.
Cool.
Okay. There's a short introduction to my person. I'm a sustainability accountant, consultant, and I'm also a strategic thinking person. And
awesome.
I heard about the Wardley map, And yeah, I jumped in and I asked myself how to start, and I started with his documentations on Medium. Yeah, his books are there, and yeah, but I think I got it. Yeah, I know what it is and what it is about, but yeah, it is still a little bit difficult, and I would like to now, or can I use it for my work when I want to help companies to become green? Yeah, so
very cool.
that is my goal. I would like to reach with Wardley mapping. Is
Awesome.
it useful for my work?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Ola.
Okay.
And that's an amazing goal. We're not gonna end up as professionals today, but hopefully, like give everybody an opportunity to play around and learn some new things.
Okay.
So I learned a little bit about Simon stuff and started playing around with it. So Simon was the CEO of a small organization, a photographic online photographic agency back in 2007 or 2008, somewhere around there. And he was trying to, or realized that as CEO, he needed to, drive the strategic direction of his organization. And so he started looking for all of these interesting ways that you could do strategy. And if you Google strategy books, you'll come up with over 500,000 or 5,000 or something. I don't know, in crazy numbers of strategy books out there. And a lot of them didn't make sense, and he didn't find a lot of really great stuff. So he decided that he was going to kind of start thinking about it from his own perspective. But someone said to him, well, read The Art of War. As is often the case, So Sun Tzu has ended his has been in many a boardroom, I think. And the interesting thing, while I don't love the metaphor of war, I feel like the metaphor of competition is, that's kind of, as for strategic thinking, that's kind of what we're doing. We're trying to understand in what markets do we want to compete, and why would we want to compete in those markets, and how are we going to compete in those markets, and what do we need to do in order to compete in those markets. And so having a way to think about that makes sense. So Simon said, well, what's missing for him is like when you're trying to make strategic decisions on a battlefield, you have about certain things, right? You know about the landscape that you're working with, that you're working on, so where are the mountains, what are the landscape, the things you can use, right, to your own advantage, or the things that might get in your way. So what's the landscape? Then you also know about the climate of the area. Does it rain in November? Does it snow in January? Does it whatever? How is that going to impact you and what you're trying to do? And what are the patterns of the climate in any given area? And then you know about the doctrine or the capabilities of your soldiers, what they can and can't do, how they can and can't do things, and where to deploy the archers based on the landscape and the climate, and where to deploy the cavalry. And those are the kinds of metaphors that he was thinking about. And so that led him to think about, okay, well, kind of what's missing for us as organizations is there's no maps. There's no maps. We can't see. We can try to, there's things that help you get an understanding of your landscape, or there's things that help you get an understanding of the doctrine within your organization. And there's some analyses that will do, or there's ways for you to grow your leadership, but there isn't anything that's kind of putting all of these different things together and looking at real sort of climatic patterns that happen no matter what, and then helping people to think about and use those to make their decisions. And so that's kind of where he was. He was like, these are the things that we need to focus on. We need to focus on creating a map for leaders, and then using that map to make the decisions that we want to make. So a couple of things. I led him to a couple of things. I led him to a realization that what we're trying to do is we're trying to decide the why of two things, right? So we're trying to decide why we're going to move in a certain direction. So the why of movement, he called it, or the why of direction, and the why of purpose. Like, what's the reason why we're doing these things? Like, what's the reason why we do things? And then why would we want to move in a specific direction? And so in order for us to do that, he's just like, we need a map. And so he started creating these things called Wardley maps. So yeah, so climate is really about the patterns that he's noticed, and he's done a lot of research. So you can go and look up a lot, and he speaks about a lot of the climatic patterns in his book. And also, there's one or two that I'm going to share today that are kind of that are overarching and that are a good starting point for everything. Henning, I'm just going to mute you. I'm sorry, there's a little bit of background noise. Sorry about that. Okay. So the climate is really about all of these different patterns that are going to happen no matter what. I'm drawing and I just need to sync. Give me 1 second. We need to open Miro again. So that's really what the climate is about. And I'll share a little bit more about that in a second. Then from a doctrine perspective, that's all the ways in which we can do something. That's how we might work. That's what are the skills available to us in our organization, but also like thinking about specific things. So for example, this is where things like Lean, Scrum, Kanban all come in, because what Simon's realized is that there's different contexts where different ways of working are more appropriate and they work better. And so, as part of your strategy and your strategic thinking about when to use Scrum versus Kanban versus Lean is also an incredibly helpful thing. So that's the doctrine. And then the landscape is really around like, what does our internal and external landscape look like? So it's the internal landscape of our own capabilities, our own, what is it that we're doing, as well as the external needs of our customers and what are they doing, and potentially like our competition as well. Alrighty. One more thing on just the kind of process as a whole is that one thing that Simon speaks about is that what he's realized is that through doing this, that strategies shouldn't be this thing that we do once and then that's it, right? It needs to be an iterative cycle, because the world is changing. And the minute you change, you start executing on a plan, the landscape changes. And the layout of the market changes and everything changes. And so, really part of the thinking about it and using this as part of your strategic thinking is also around making sure that you are constantly reevaluating where are we and where are we going. And so he combined some of the Sun Tzu Art of War stuff with the OODA loop, the observe, orientate, decide, and act. So, what is going on around us? That's the kind of observing and orientating, is creating the map, understanding where we are within that map. Deciding is, taking some action or making decisions. And then, and then we're going to act on those decisions. And then we've got to kind of reorient or reobserve, right? And so those are the other parts of the Wardley mapping. Okay, cool. I'm going to move on to the next frame, which is over here. So how do you create a map? I hear you ask. Great question. I'm going to start with a super simple map, and then we're going to go from there. And then I've created some space for you to practice and try it out yourself as well, if you want. So you can try it out with a group and see what you learn from doing it, and then kind of I'll share a little bit more about what I've learned and how I've applied it and where I've applied them. So the first thing that you need if you're going to create a map is an anchor. So a map needs directionality, right, and an anchor. And so we need to know where north is, essentially. And so we start with a user and a user need. Okay. You always want to start with a user and a user need, and as far as possible, so you don't you speak when Simon speaks about mapping, he speaks about really focusing on the user need and not the business need, because we can go quite sideways from there quite fast. And then also, I think you miss the external landscape when you're thinking very internally, right? So you want to balance these things out. Okay, so we start off with a user and a need. So we're going to use Bob, and Bob wants to make tea.
Joe,
Yes.
just a quick thing. Could you hide the cursors on your screen if you don't
Ah,
like
yes,
them?
I
So
can.
then we don't. There we go. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks for that. Okay, cool. So Bob wants tea. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do once we've figured out that Bob wants tea is we need to start listing. So we start with a user and a user need. And my experience of mapping so far is that sometimes that's the most difficult part of the process, is agreeing on who's the user and who's the need and what's the map we're creating right now. There's no right or wrong answer when you're mapping. It's really about what are the conversations that we can have, what is the learning that we're going to get, what are the insights that we can get from doing this. That's really what you're after. Right. So the goal is not the artifact, the goal is the thinking, the goal is the conversation, the goal is the collaboration, all of those wonderful, wonderful things. Alrighty. So Bob is our user and Bob wants tea. Okay. So once we've got that, the next thing that we need to think about, and I'm just going to go super, super, super simple, because like the maps get really complex really fast, and then it can get quite messy. So my other advice is just start really simple and then kind of add and expand and change and do things like that. So the next thing is to write down or figure out what are the capabilities and components that we need in order to make a cup of tea, right? So in order for us to make a cup of tea, we need a tea bag, probably, right? We need a cup. We need some water. We probably need some power to make the water hot. And we probably need a kettle. Let's go with a kettle. Now, super straightforward. So just the components and capabilities. Next thing we want to understand about these is we want to kind of map them to a bit of a value chain. So if we have to think about them from the perspective of how do they depend on each other, what would that look like? Okay. So for example, the tea bag needs a cup and water, and maybe water needs a cup. So we could do it like that or like that, however we thought. And you know, and then the water needs power, and you know, or maybe the water needs a kettle and the kettle needs power. But in order for us to make the tea, we need to do these kinds of things. So we've got a tea bag, you know, and the tea bag needs a cup and water, you know, or maybe we do it like this. And then the water needs a kettle to heat it and some, well, to heat the water and some power. Yeah. Does that feel like a value chain that could make sense to everybody? I know I'm like, it's just a tea here, but it's gonna get exciting fast. I promise you. Just hang in there. Alrighty, we're gonna get exciting. Okay, so cool. So now we've got a value chain. So one of the things that Simon did was they did a lot of research on what are climatic patterns that he's noticed that happen for product development, for companies, for everything. And one of the things that is true is that everything evolves, right? Absolutely everything evolves. And it follows the same path. It goes from Genesis through this evolutionary path towards commoditization. Alrighty. So Genesis are new things, exciting things. I guess AI might be in the Genesis phase at the moment, and everyone's trying to plug it in somewhere and whatever. And things like power, we buy by the kilowatt hour, right? So that is kind of in the utility or commodity space, right? So that's kind of how you can think about these things. The things that are in a genesis phase are new, are exciting. Things that are in a commodity phase are ubiquitous. Everybody has them. You can buy them by the hour. So there's genesis, custom built product or rental over here, and then commodity or utility. So he uses the kind of he uses the example of shipbuilding. So when we first started to make ships, we were building each bolt and rivet were individually made, right? So each nut, bolt, rivet, they were individually made, and the pair was made to match each other back in the day. Fast forward a couple of thousand years, Industrial Revolution. I might have the specific numbers wrong, so don't hold me to that. But, you know, like fast forward a couple hundred years, Industrial Revolution, all of those things. And all of a sudden, we're making nuts and bolts that are totally standardized, right? Nuts and bolts are standardized. They make in different sizes, everything from little guys to huge guys. And now all of a sudden, we can make other things, right? Our capabilities have changed, have totally changed. We can make buildings and bridges and ships and trains and anything else we can think of, right? Because of this. So this trend is that, first of all, everything evolved from genesis to commoditization. And the second thing is that as things evolve, they make way for new possibilities, new opportunities, new outcomes. Alrighty. And so the first thing that we need to do once we've got our value chain is to, in order for us to have a map, we need to create movement, right? Like, where on the landscape of this pattern do these things fall? So power, for example, is firmly in the commodity space, right? We buy it by the kilowatt hour. Let's go there. And I'm going to get to power again in a second, because if you know a little bit about South Africa, then you might know we currently have electricity challenges. Okay, so power, commodity, kettle probably somewhere in the product rental space. And again, sometimes there's no wrong or right answers here, because it's quite tricky for your own specific context, but it's about having the conversation and the debate, especially if you disagree, right? If you disagree with each other, that there's a lot in that, right? A lot of information in that. So kettle is probably there. Water, again, we're firmly in this utility space, and we got our cup probably in this product, and somewhere between product and commodity, and tea bags similar. So most of our stuff is kind of on the right-hand side of this map. Cool. So yay, now what? Well, we've got our first map, which is kind of exciting, right? And now we can start asking ourselves some very interesting questions, and we can start thinking about different things. Like, if we're a kettle company, for example, where might we want to go? So in South Africa, power is it's a commodity for sure, and we buy it for sure, but we just don't always have it. Okay, so we get something called load shedding, and load shedding happens between 2 and 8 or 9 hours every day. So you'll be without power for between 2 and 9 hours on any given day. Alrighty. So now you can see how this is going to mess with your ability to have tea, right? Because, you know, if you've got an electric kettle, then that's a problem. So if we're a kettle company, you know, maybe an opportunity for us is to kind of go into the solar kettle space, you know, I don't know, solar kettles, you know. So we're thinking about what is the current landscape that we find ourselves in from these specific perspectives, and we're looking for opportunities, asking ourselves questions, right? So solar kettles. Also in South Africa, we've got a lot of people that don't have a lot of money, but yet drink quite a lot of tea. So what if we actually scaled down and went with solar cups? You know, the perfect cup of tea, and you just put water in a tea bag and you stick it in the sun for 5 minutes, and because we've got a lot of sunlight here as well, you know, so that's quite a bonus. So, you know, maybe solar cup. and these are just ideas. We're just thinking, we're spitballing. This isn't necessarily making decisions. This is just like using the map to help us see new things, right? New ideas, get new ideas, So maybe there's opportunities in the cup space. Yeah, solar cups. Alrighty. What about tea bags? Oh, CBD is becoming a huge thing globally, right? The people in South Africa are incredibly stressed out because of this lack of power situation. And we feel like we could help to relax the people of South Africa if we developed a product of, CBD tea, relaxer tea relaxer, something along those lines. That could be something worth investing in from our strategic perspectives. What about AI? AI is coming in here, so maybe what relaxed tea. So we're creating custom built maybe or new products, and maybe there already is stuff like that out there, and we'd have to do some research, but we're starting to think of some ideas. And that's kind of where you go from here, as you ask for you start thinking about ideas. So a couple of things that I want to highlight. So the first thing is there's this climatic pattern that says that everything evolves. Whether we like it or not, things are going to evolve. And so we can start to look for signs that can help us to predict the evolution or the change of certain things. Alrighty. So that is a big pattern that happens. The second big pattern that happens is that evolution leads to new opportunities, right? So through evolution, we can create new opportunities for certain things. And if the evolution didn't happen, then we couldn't. So one of the things that we can think about doing is for things that are in this space, how can we push them that way? For things that we find over here, what are the new opportunities that we see? So we can create movement. Where are we going and why are we going there? Another important pattern that there is there's this notion of inertia, which happens over here. So when organizations are incredibly successful, they don't necessarily want to change anything because, I don't know, maybe you've heard it before, we've been doing this for 100 years and we're going to keep doing it for 100 more. Some of the things that people say, or they just like, there's hubris, right, to their success. So some good examples of inertia due to past success are Nokia. It's the same stories, right? It's Nokia, it's BlackBerry, it's Blockbuster. The commoditization, you think about it, there was a commoditization of movies from physical to streaming, right? Blockbuster didn't want to go there. They were very successful. So they didn't do. Kodak was similar, right? So a lot of even the big mainframe guys like the IBMs, the Hewlett Packards, it's the cloud getting in early into cloud because the same thing, right? It was a commoditization of compute or of computing power, and they were doubled down on building mainframes. And now even banks are getting off mainframes and going into cloud-based things. So yeah, so kind of so those are the kinds of things that happen. So when you're in the space, those are the kinds of questions that you might want to ask yourself. It's like, are we treating something as custom built when in actual fact it's, we should be buying it? Like, why are we custom building a CRM system when you can buy one off the shelf for half of what, or rent one? Software as a service, we can rent whatever, we can pay a user license and we've got a CRM. But now we're going to spend 3 years building a CRM system, but why? He uses the story of a server company where they were making servers and at one point couldn't find a rack. There was no standardization, so they built server racks. But at some point, all of that became standardized. So they had this whole custom built server rack situation happening that was costing them time and money. And they were like, why are we still doing this? Like, just buy the server racks, they don't need to be custom built. Everything is standard now because they couldn't find ones that would fit them back in the day. Yeah, so we can ask ourselves those kinds of questions, right? Like, are we custom building something that we should actually just be buying, or renting? What are the opportunities that we have for pushing something more into a more commoditized space? What does that look like? And what does that mean from a creating new things or having new opportunities perspective? There's a whole lot of kind of are we biased about something? You've got a lot of great questions. Is this capability toxic to us? Are we overcommitted to something? You know, what, how are we building this? What's the doctrine that we're using to build this? So yeah, so that's one last thing that I'm going to share is that in terms of methods, it makes a lot of sense to be doing kind of design thinking stuff here, Scrum stuff here, all the way to about there, I guess. And then here you want to use Kanban. And in this lean space, you really, in this commodity space, you really want a lean or a Six Sigma approach, you know, as a way of work, because you're all about the efficiencies. Yeah, that you're trying to get. So that could be another question. Like, can we get more efficiencies out of this part of our system? Whatever. And then the cool thing is, like, you can blow this map up or shrink it, right? So you could take, you know, water, and you could like go through what are all the things around water. You know, we need pumps and we need taps and we need blah blah. Like, what are all the components and capabilities needed to deliver water in out of a tap? You know, maybe you've decided you want that's part of your business, or you know, or power. You're in South Africa and you're like, here's an opportunity for us to not just make tea but branch into solar. Okay, cool. What does that look like? You know, I mean, stranger things. Yeah. But it's about using what the awesomeness that you've got here, and you want to do it with a group of people. So never map alone. Do it with a group of people, so that you can get the best like thinking and diverse ideas and all of those kinds of things in. And then you can make decisions like, where are we going for the next couple of years, and why would we want to go there, right? Like, why would we want to go there? Well, because of these reasons, and this makes sense now. And what do we notice? Yeah. So I'm going to pause there for questions. And then I have an exercise for some breakout. Stop sharing. Any questions?
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
I do have a question. So just as you started doing the design thinking and kind of talked a bit about what makes sense where, are there any correlation between complexity and his zones? Because when I look at it, it kind of looks like it could start from complex and then start working its way down.
Yes,
Maybe
yes.
not so linearly, but at least to some degree.
Yeah. So I definitely see the like overlaps, and actually Simon and Dave Snowden once did a talk together. Because like I totally see it. I think in the genesis and custom build phase, there's the higher levels of complexity and far more uncertainty. I think as you progress, like you say, you're probably moving more into the complicated spaces as you move more towards commoditization. I don't know if you'd ever go into clear, or maybe, depending. I think probably in some contexts. But then I think that there's like the disruptors, which may happen because of inertia and all of those kinds of things. I think those are where the big disruptors in the market happen, and then I think that could send things into chaos. Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. But I don't know, maybe other people see it differently.
Well, at least the way you describe it, I actually got to thinking maybe the Stacy model is a better representation of kind of the how and the what uncertainties. In that way, it would be kind of more like a true map where position on it actually matters, both in terms of kind of the what and how complexities could kind of play a role. I wonder.
Yeah, actually, now that you mention it, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to do more thinking about that. Thanks. That's very cool. Any other questions? Okay, so on the Miro board, I've created a space for you to play in groups already. I don't know how many of you know each other or how well you know each other. So it's going to be a bit weird because I'm just randomly putting you in groups of about 4. But I think it might be fun. Oh, we're going to lose some peeps because they don't feel like being in groups. If you don't feel like being in groups, then just like, I'll make it invitation only and you don't have to go. Alrighty. So I'm going to give you like 10 minutes, but over here, I'm just going to bring everyone to me. There's the 3 frames, alrighty. So, and I've started and I've got a little bit of a case study, and I just thought, why don't you play around and, you know, think about the strategy of the business of the Majo tea company and see where you get to, and then I'll share some of the other stuff that I've done. Cool. I'm just going to alrighty, cool. Here you go. I'll set a thingy on the Miro for like 10 minutes, and so play around for 10 minutes and then come back and we'll see where we are. Cool. Is everyone back? Not quite yet. No, I think everyone should be back. Welcome. Was that not quite enough time to do anything exciting?
It was a little bit short, but
Yeah.
we got some ideas.
Cool. So do you want to share anything that came up or anything that you learned or any insights that you shared?
Well, I just wonder. I find it very hard not to really fast to jump into conclusions, to jump into what should the solution be. So I was just thinking, how can you with this Wardley mapping stay in the problem area a bit longer before you begin to talk about which solutions you should do for the customer?
That is a very good point. I think as humans, we want to jump into that solution space. And so, yeah, having a facilitator or someone to help remind us, or a voice in the room that's like, hey, let's remember, or a giant sticky note that says, stay in the problem space, or some way, because I think it is really tough often. Yeah, that was a very good observation. Yeah. Maybe someone else has got some ideas for staying in the problem space. Anyone?
I think the way we ended up treating it was almost like a lying down opportunity solution tree. So we kind of started with an opportunity of giving customers more agency. And then it became a little bit more into solutions as we kind of, or experiments, you can say, as we went a bit further down into the custom space. So it's almost like we just flipped an opportunity solution tree to kind of cater for having a little bit more of an outcome in the Genesis space where we wanted to explore it a bit, and then what kind of experiments that could lead to.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that a lot. Ola, did you want to add something?
Yeah, just on the problems versus solution kind of sometimes false dichotomy. My understanding of Wardley maps is that you're constantly hopping between both extremes, because you're both in the territory, building maps, just models of the territory, deciding what dimension territory to focus on, exploring sub-dimensions. I mean, Wardley has those 4.
Thinking about ideas.
So you have those 4, so you explore each one of those sub-4 domains of the territory, but at the same time, it's almost like having multiple brains, which is what strategy is. And so,
which is kind of cool.
Sorry, a colleague interrupted me. I worked together with Yes, and in the end, I asked, what can we do about the power? Because as a sustainability consultant, I've got an eye. So power is a commodity that is obvious, but for me, it is a question: what kind of power station stands behind it? So Comes the power from an atomic power station, or from a windmill, or from sun panels? And yeah, that was our last point in our decisions or our discussion.
Which is really cool. And it's an awesome example of how you know, you can explode or condense the map, right? So map can grow, so you can take that now and then just like, cheers Alex, you can take that and you can grow your map, or you can kill the map, or whatever the case may be. So you can explode one aspect of it, and exactly to Maru's point, it's like it's treading that different line, like, you know, like ideas and understanding where we are, and trying to think about it from a competitor's perspective and the current market landscape that we've got. And this is why I love these, because there's like a lot of layers and a lot of nuance that you can explore in each map as well. I'm going to share one last thing, and then that will be us, because I think our time is nearly up. So I just want to share kind of an example of what I did as a last thing. And there we go. Alrighty. So I did my own version of the MyJo tea company, and I had ethical luxury tea in the mouths of our customers. I kind of exploded out some of the aspects of it. So the e-commerce websites and emailers, and I stole some things from other people, and then I added my own specific things in there. Yeah, and then I use that to think about some new ideas around tea recipes and combinations, or AI for logistics. What if we were a logistics business in South Africa, and in the context of Africa at the moment, moving anything is logistically quite tricky, because there's not a great rail infrastructure, and the trucks can get stuck a lot. So these are the cool things. It's like it's also about having the conversations in context, right? And bringing the context, which is essentially a richer description of the landscape, into the conversations that you're having. So if you're having a conversation about your logistics division, are you talking about your logistics division in Europe? Are you talking about your logistics division in Asia? Are you talking about your logistics division in Africa? Because your strategy for each of those might be somewhat different because of where they are, right? And so that's also what mapping is all about. It's about exploding and exploring all of these different things. So thank you, everybody, for joining me today. I'd love to hear from everyone. There's some sticky notes over here, so I'm just going to bring everyone to me. And if you could add a sticky note to the board, that would be fantastic. I'm going to stop sharing, and I'll hand back over to Jan.
Yeah, and I just need to find the unmute button. Thank you for that, Joe. I hope people had some good dialogues and good discussions. I can at least see from some input I got from other channels that there have been some good dialogues out in the breakout rooms or groups. So that's great. I'm also, if somebody has some more input into this topic, please put it in the chat. Take it onto the meetup group page there. Also, if you have suggestions for diving more into similar topics, please share those. The recording of this session, which I will stop in a bit, will be shared on the YouTube channel afterwards, so people can watch the recording or share it with others. And yeah, our next session is in Aarhus. That's planned late or in a week or two in Aarhus, and then we will get back with some topics and agenda points for next year later this year. So if I don't see you in Aarhus, I hope people have some good holidays, and when you get to that, and a good new year. and looking forward to seeing you the next in 2024. Yeah. Thank you very much for participating. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Take care, everyone. Have a nice new year then.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody. Have an awesome